As an aside, before we start, I was going to share a podcast little tip for you as you begin the new year. I was listening, and blessings go all the way back to Genesis. And when God created Adam and Eve, the first acts he did was bless them. And you can see that tradition as it goes forward, with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all of the forefathers blessing their children and speaking blessings over them. So I encourage you this year to speak blessings over those people in your lives, whether it's your children or your wife or your spouse or your mom or your dad, those people in your relationships. There's power, as we're learning through Proverbs. The tongue has blessings and curses, right? So speak blessings over those in your lives. I think that would be a good way to start the year, right? Is to see that. And we'll see some of those things as we get into chapter 18. We started a little bit in 18, and we left off with verse 3 last week. So we're going to pick up with verse 4. And God is already calling, I can see, wanting to join the study. So, not sure who's
is it
ringing.
not on your phone? That's funny, I was sitting there looking at Katia, I thought it was Katia.
I know, I'm looking at Katia too, because it's from here, so I'm
It
here.
did sound like yours.
Sorry, my phone's
That's
never
okay.
on sound. I can't handle listening to my phone ring.
Yeah.
It's usually always, and it is on silent, that's so weird. But it was
I
on
put it on silent, and
That was
then I have
fine.
to use the mechanism to make it
I'm
ring.
surprised it has battery after 3 days.
Okay, let's go to 18:4. Who'd like to read?
Say 18:4.
Yeah.
The words of a man's mouth are deep waters, the wellspring of wisdom is a flowing brook.
Okay, so you have to use, Solomon uses figures of speech kind of like Jesus did and things that were common to his time, okay? So what he's doing is he's comparing deep waters with a fresh brook or a running, think like Colorado, like a running clear river versus deep water like Lake Bonham, okay? So what he's saying is that man's, meaning the worldly man, their mouth is like deep waters, meaning you can't see the bottom. You can't see the intent. You can't see the motivation. You can't see the heart. It's opaque in its speech. Think like a politician. When they say one thing and mean something different, it's opaque, right? Whereas wisdom is going to be like that flowing river. It's not only going to be clear and clean, but it's going to be like drinkable water. You wouldn't want to drink from like a stagnant pool, right? But in an emergency, if it's a flowing river near the Colorado, fresh snow coming off, you can drink that water. And that's kind of like our mouth. Our mouths should speak wisdom. They should be transparent. They should be life-giving. They should be flowing with the Spirit, right? So that's what this is about. So based on that, how's your mouth? Is it speaking flowing? Is it speaking life? Is it transparent? Is it clear? And you can also use this with others, right? How many times do others speak and you don't know the intent? It's opaque, it's deep water, right? Thoughts? No?
Makes sense.
Okay. Let's go on to 5.
It is not good to show partiality to the wicked or to overthrow the righteous in judgment.
So we've had a lot of these verses where, God's justice requires twofold here, whereas the wicked get judgment, they're not spared judgment, and the righteous should be found innocent and not judged or punished for being righteous. And we've kind of talked about this, like Tina Peters comes to mind as a present day example of that, in my opinion, if you're following that case. And if not, you can Google it. But she was pardoned, and yet she's still in solitary, and she's, a mother of a fallen soldier, and tried to do the right thing and kept a record of the election, and she's being prosecuted by Colorado. And in spite of a presidential pardon, they won't release her because they know she can be a witness against them, right? So that's an example modern day, but we see this all the time, and it's dual fold. It's don't withhold judgment, and it's also don't punish righteousness, right? It's the inverse, and we see the culture doing that, right? Celebrating things that are wicked, right? You can love the person, but you don't love the sin or celebrate the sin. That makes sense? So my question here is, do you think, can a person that does these things, do you think they truly fear God?
No.
I agree. Because if you truly fear God, right? Think about this as you start the year. If you have a true fear of God, then that should govern how you behave, right? You should fear God more than man, right? What can man do? He may be able to snuff out this temporary life, but oh death, where is your sting, right? Mm-hmm. The real one you should fear and reverence is the Lord, right?
Yeah.
So even though your boss may be evil and you may not feel like doing a good job, you have to understand that your boss ultimately is Jesus, right? And through this, he's expecting you to do a full day's work, right? Does that make sense? Kind of meandered around that, but 6 and 7.
The lips of fools bring them strife, and their mouths invite a beating. The mouths of fools are their undoing, and their lips are a snare to their very lives.
So, a couple of things. We've had several verses on this. Where you see contention, you see sin, right? So the sin and the contention, and fools stir up sin, they stir up fighting, you know the type, right? Mm-hmm. You get in a room and the first thing they got to do is poke the bear. They got to do something to start something because they live for the drama, right? And and the mouth calls for blows, but understand blowing, we've already read some of that, that's foolishness. You're not going to be able to beat the foolishness out of them, right? And unfortunately, some of us have tried and it doesn't work, right? So, the fool's mouth leads to destruction, and then the second part, his lips are a snare of his soul. I thought that was a pretty deep thing, right? So your lips, if they go uncorrected, then they're leading to your soul. Because remember, your lips are either speaking life or death, and if you're speaking destruction and death, where you speak, you go, right? So we have to be careful with our speech, right? I believe it was, I'm trying to think, may have been James, I don't know where the verse is, but it says like a big ship is turned by a small rudder, and the tongue is the same way, right? Mm-hmm. The tongue is a rudder. So your tongue is going to guide your actions. That makes sense? So, do we also act foolish to those who get on our nerves and only focus on the negative, not seeing the positive? And where this question is coming from is it's this quote from McGee. I thought this was good. Be considerate. Most people know how to express a complaint, but few utter a gracious compliment. The bee is seldom complimented for making honey. It is just criticized for stinging.
That is good.
Right? So try to look for the positive. With some people that's a challenge, I'll grant you. But Normally there is some positive. So if you try to understand that, we'll have other verses later on this. Let's go to verse 8, because these two are kind of tied together. So let's go on to 8.
The words of a talebearer are like nasty trifles, and they go down into the inmost body.
Yeah, my translation says tasty, but nasty is probably
Did I say nasty? I'm sorry.
tasty.
Well,
Yeah.
trifles are tasty.
Well, nasty is kind of the aftermath. They're tasty while you're eating them, but it'll be nasty later, right? So what it's saying here is gossips. And gossips, you know, this is a balance. Once again, this is wisdom literature, right? So, you know, but churches are not immune to this, right? A lot of times it's churches, oh, bless their heart, did you hear? You know, oh, well, I have a confidential prayer request I heard from someone. You know, okay, you know, we have to be careful with that, right? Sometimes you need to know things before you go do business with somebody, and you need counsel, and you need to understand the character of another person. Other times it's just straight up gossip. So we're gonna have to use wisdom in this. And you know, when your gossip radar is starting to come up, you know, you really have two choices. You can first not take part in it. That's always good. And the second is you can politely ask them if they've discussed this matter directly with the person involved, right? Because that's the biblical way, right? Is you're supposed to discuss it directly with them, right? So gossips, you know, can tear apart a church. It can get real cliquish. It can get real, and it's not fair to the person being gossiped about if they don't even know about it, you know, and just don't go down that rabbit trail. It's not a fun place to be, and it hurts the whole body. Okay, let's go on to 9, verse 9.
He who is slothful in his work is a brother to him who is a great destroyer.
So we probably all know those people that are slothful, right? It's quite a contrast, right? I think, you know, sometimes it's a little harder in an office setting to see those, because a lot of times you don't see the deliverables quite as clear, you know, as when you're on a project with a timeline like you and the mom thing. You're gonna find out who's slothful and who's not really quick. You know, if you got 2 minutes to shop, there's no time to be slothful, right? So, but it's amazing, you know, to me with the farm work. I know Billy brought a little kid to help us, Carter, who's 12, and this little kid did 400 trees, I mean, like that.
Yeah.
You know, it would have killed me, getting down on my knees and tying the rubber bands. Was a little shorter for him, but you know, each rubber band, 400 trees, the kid worked hard, right? And that's how we should be, and understand that your work ethic is a testimony, right? So understand that you're undermining, you know, I'll just read this a little bit from Believers. We know today that shoddy workmanship in cars, airplanes, buildings are the cause of fatal accidents. This is also true in offices, leadership in the church, where negligence of responsibility can lead to a breakdown of fellowship. A church may be disintegrated through foolish negligence and laziness, as well as Satan's attacks. Because if you've ever watched any of those Animal Kingdom episodes, y'all ever watched those before? You know, when a lion goes and attacks like a gazelle or, you know, a deer or something. If you'll notice, they get the ones at the end of the pack, the one that's already limping,
Yeah.
right? And that's why the analogy of Satan is like a roaring lion, right? The lion only roars when he actually has your prey. He doesn't roar before he attacks. He roars to let you know he owns you at that point, right? He's got you on the ground. Then he can roar, right? So when you have this kind of stuff going on, you've got laziness, you've got gossip, you've got all these, you got open wounds and you're limping. That's when the enemy can attack viciously and take you down, right? That's where he needs our gaps in the armor, so to speak, so that he can attack. And that happens in a family, that happens in a church, in a business, in a work environment, all that. And it's your testimony, right? So if you're a strong Christian, you're vocal about your faith and all that, and your work ethic sucks,
Then the rest of
you're
your words.
ruining your testimony. Like,
Yeah.
well, this guy might love Christ, but I don't want him on my team because I got to get the work done, and he doesn't work. You just ruined all of your testimony.
Yeah.
Right? So just understand that those are tied together, right? Like in the men's Bible study, one of my younger members that just finished the Bible in a year, first time through, he was talking about Paul, right? So Paul, as many of y'all know, was a tent maker, right? So even though he was this wonderful pastor, apostle, there for a long time, he did not get support where he preached. He actually made tents, did double the work so that he wouldn't be a burden or so that no one had to support him, right? That's an example, right? We don't see too many pastors doing that today, right? So, let's go on to 10 and 11.
The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. The rich man's wealth is his strong city, and like a high wall in his own esteem.
Okay, so see the contrast here. You have to put yourself, remember we've talked about this, the $10 word is hermeneutical, but it's putting it in time frames, right? Putting this in historical time frames. They didn't have bombs or that type of thing back then in warfare, but you'd have a strong tower. A tower would be hard to reach. You would have to get a ladder up there or something like that. It would be very hard to reach. And a strong city was protected by strong walls. But what are the walls in this passage? What are they built on?
The name of the Lord.
No,
About
the
the rich
walls.
man.
What?
The rich man?
Yeah, but the walls are on his own esteem.
Oh yeah,
Right.
he thinks he's untouchable because
Right,
of his money.
so
because
the
of his
walls
wealth.
are the pride.
Yeah.
See? So his whole wall, his defense of his home, of his city, is his pride. Well, what comes before the fall? Pride. Right? So he's built it on a faulty foundation. If the wall goes, the city goes, right? So as opposed to the strong tower is the Lord in all caps there is Yahweh. That's God Almighty. And we kind of see this in a way, if you're coming on Wednesday nights, we're going through Matthew 24. And in 70 AD, there were a lot of false prophets, even though Jesus had said that the temple was going to be destroyed and all this, and the curtain got ripped and the Lord's presence left the temple. There were false prophets saying, this is our tower. Come here. The Romans can't hurt you in the temple because God's here, right? God had already left the building like Elvis, right? There was no God there. So they were not where they were supposed to be, and they ended up perishing. Millions of Jews perished, right? So, we have to be where God is. So, the question here is, who is your strong tower, right? Where are you putting that? And I put it here, based on time spent, money spent, time served, prayer life, would a third party impartial judge say your strong tower is the Lord? What do you think?
It's a good introspective question to ask.
Yeah. Because we probably all have areas where we might say yes and areas where we might say
Not so much.
not so much, right? We tend to compartmentalize our lives, and we have this one little area that, you know, that one's kind of mine.
Mhm.
Got to that yet? You know, no need to clean out that closet yet.
Yeah.
Right? That kind of stuff. So, any thoughts on that? Going into 26, where do y'all think you need to work on? Anybody willing to share?
My mouth.
Your mouth? Yeah,
That's always a project.
that's a tough one. I know. I'm getting better at it, but I still stub my toe in the middle of the night and you'd be amazed at what comes out of my mouth. Go ahead.
I guess kind of trolling people on social media. I know that Pastor Lynn had said it a couple weeks ago, like however you carry yourself on like comments and on social media is kind of a reflection of who you are too at the same time. So you just gotta, you know, not do that. You know, just if you try, you know, the politics or even the Venezuela thing, you just read some stuff on there that you kind of want to argue with and stuff like that. And it's kind of just stay out of it, you know, and don't say
Yeah.
anything that, you know.
Yeah, and I'm tempted with that too, right? I post mainly biblical, but I do post other stuff. That's definitely
I don't
sure.
even have social media. I'm a better person for it. No,
That's-
I don't even distract myself with it. I don't even like. I watch the news on TV. That's that. I have zero social media
Yeah, and the news
because
is
I don't want to
questionable
entertain all this
now.
other. I just don't want to entertain crap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Frankly, that's just.
No, it's
Like,
definitely.
Really, you've seen this on Facebook? No.
It's a suck of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And definitely can be a rabbit hole. You know.
To be honest, time spent is a struggle. There's always something to stay busy with. There's always something to be doing other than putting your time into what we should be putting our time into. There's always something else to do and not very intentional. There is time spent, but it tends to be more of that afterthought of, oh yeah, I need to do that instead of that intentional time.
And try to think of it like, you know, an elephant. They eat it one bite at a time, right? So try to think of that 2-degree change that you can make. Just something simple in your daily routine that you can work God in. Maybe that's while I'm in the car, I'm going to be listening to Christian radio, or, you know, whatever it might be, or that I have to read, you know, a 5-minute devotional before I open my phone, or, you know, check my notifications or all that, so I can put God first. You know, do you pray before you wake up? Do you pray with your loved ones at night? You know, how many times a day do you pray? Do you pray more times a day than you eat? You know, think about that. Just simple things make a big difference. Okay, Let's go on to 12 then.
So before destruction, the heart of man is hard, before honor is humility.
So this was interesting. I'll read this from the Bible commentary, Believer's Bible commentary. It says, pride has one foot in the grave and another on a banana skin. Humility walks securely towards honor. William Law draws the contrast sharply. Look not at pride as only unbecoming temper, nor humility as a decent virtue. One is hell, and the other all heaven. So what do you think is meant by him calling pride hell?
It's a separation from God.
Yeah, I think that's good.
I mean, that's what hell is. It's separation from God. And when we're prideful, that also separates us from the Lord. Because we're not focused on Him, we're focused on our own selfish desires or what we're. It's self-centered, not God-centered.
Go ahead.
Pride is the first recorded, Satan being prideful and take over.
The original sin.
Yeah, Adam and Eve will be prideful, because Satan, the thing is, Satan said, surely you will die, but God knows that if you take a bite of this, you'll be smarter than him. And that's really what they were going for. I was wondering when it said that the fruit was pretty and all that, when he said that, and they took it back, that's what they wanted to do sometimes.
Yeah, I might argue that, the Bible verse that says money is the root of all evil, but I would say pride even ahead of money. I think that's, in Satan's arsenal, that's the nuclear weapon, right?
Yeah.
Like if you can get the person to be prideful, and you can be prideful in all kinds of things, even good things, right? You can have too much pride in your children and elevate them above God, right? Or elevate them above your spouse or other things, and that can cause problems in your relationship. So we have to, it's getting a little warm here. So we have to be on the guard for pride at all times. And we also need to be sensitive about pride, because being wise is knowing who you're dealing with too, right? Jesus was really good at that, right? He asked those questions. He could decide who had pride, who didn't, what the root of the problem was. All of that, if you're able to sense or understand where the pride is, or that type of stuff, you can protect yourself from a lot of heartache, Okay, let's go on to 13. So there was a wise guy, he used to be here, named Chris Flanagan, and this is one of his favorite sayings, and it is seek understanding before reaction. So a lot of times we want to sum things up. We just want to make a quick judgment, and we don't get the facts, right? And we end up making a wrong judgment. If you have multiple kids, you know this, right? Because there's always the question of who done it, right? In my house, it was not me, right? Because all my kids would say not me. And you have to try to suss out who it was. And if I guessed, I always guessed wrong, right? So sometimes it took strong measures for me to figure out who was the one that would really did it. So when the kids were fairly little, Lola was, my youngest, was probably 6, maybe 7. And I lined them all up, and they were all lying. both off. I bent them over and cracked it. I made a big dramatic thing of it. And she was all tears. I knew she didn't do it, but I was trying to make an example. And then my voice said, I'll take it for her, you know. And then the guilty party, of course, would have let her sister get the spanking before she'd fess up. So I was able to tell quickly, without even having to spank them, exactly who did it, right? And that's kind of how life is we sometimes make snap judgments, or we react, and we react out of anger, and we don't get all the facts, right? I had an incident recently with, on Christmas night, my son and my, my daughter's boyfriend were out hunting, and they shot a deer, and the deer jumped the fence. He was wounded, but he still jumped the fence. So they went to chase him and went over the fence. And the people that own the property behind us are supposedly from San Antonio or something. And I didn't know that they had leased it out for a deer lease, and they had hunters back there. Well, they were trying to chase the wounded animal and tromp on all through there. They couldn't find him. And then about an hour later, they came back, and I won't go through all the details, but 2 guys showed up in their truck, pissed off, cussing me out, saying I trespassed, I'm gonna call the game warden on you. Just don't, and I'm trying to explain. He goes, and they cut my deer feeder. They didn't cut his deer feeder, you know, but he was just pissed, and he was seeking reaction before understanding, you know. And we all do that. And I tried to put myself in his shoes, because I really wanted to just punch the guy out or sidekick him in the face for him doing that in my own driveway and pulling in my house to do that and treat me like that on Christmas Day. But I didn't, right? So, you know, so we all do that, right? We all react before we seek understanding. And that could have could have been handled a lot easier, you know, as he just said, hey, we got a deer lease behind you. I know you're new, I haven't met you, you know, I would have called him if we were crossing the line if I had his number. Didn't have his number, right? I didn't even know it was leased, right? So we were just chasing a wounded animal, you know, so he didn't suffer. But all that didn't matter, right? Because the facts didn't matter. It was the reaction, right? And we all get into that, right? We all get into those red-faced moments where we just, you know, react instead of seeking understanding, you know? You met people like that? Or
I
you
had a
like
situation at work like that the last month where I was working with a guy that, and I was even talking to you about it after work, like made the assumption that this guy was lazy and just didn't want to do the job that we're doing because it's pretty physical, but he has had a lot of tenure there at the job, and I was telling Katia, like, no, you know, this and that, and not that I judge people, I try not to judge people like that, but I mean, it made it hard because the other coworkers were making these assumptions as well, and so now I'm kind of like, they're putting words in my ear, but they don't know the facts about this guy either. And I was telling Katia after work, I was like, we're all feeling this type of way about this guy. Well, then as the week goes on, I come to find out he had a massive hernia in his stomach that he's not even able to physically lift these boxes because he's done it for 15 years and has over time from doing this job has developed a health situation that you would have never known that. Like, we're thinking he's lazy, and he come to find out, and now he's been working like this a long time, and because of that has injured himself. And I kind of felt bad. Like, I was like, here I was thinking this guy just kind of lazy and didn't want to work, and it was quite the other way in that situation. So from then on, I was just kind of like, well, it just can't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
I think the whole lesson's right in that story, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Gossip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Laziness.
Yeah.
Well, for assuming.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and I told Katina, like, I felt bad because here I was presuming about this guy.
He said, I got humbled today.
Yeah, I did.
That's
you know
how
what I
God
mean?
does it sometimes, and we don't understand because we don't seek to understand first, right? We see, it's easier to react. We let our emotions take over, you know, and then I was honestly a little angry about this encounter I had with the guy. So then late last night, I'm reading this and I was convicted and I had to text him and apologize and told him I would pray for him, you know, because I knew that was the right biblical thing to do, even though he treated me like a jerk and did warning shots at my pregnant daughter, which I was not very happy about. But nonetheless, you know, I knew it was the right thing to do. So let's go on to verse 14.
The spirit of a man will sustain him in sickness, but who can bear a broken spirit?
Okay, so this gets back, the contrast here is the natural man versus the spirit man, right? And the spirit is eternal, the natural man is perishing, right? If you read ahead, we're going to get a new body, right? We're going to get a new glorified body. We're going to live eternal. You're eternal now in your spirit, you know, and to be absent the body is to be present with Christ. So there's no dying of your spirit. It's just a moving from one tent to a permanent house. This is just a flesh tent, right? So what this is saying is once your spirit gives, then it's, to use the tent analogy, the tent pole just busts. There's no strength to hold the tent up anymore, right? And we've seen this. If you've seen like an older couple, you know, been married 40 or 50 years, one of them passes away and then the other one has a broken heart and 2-3 weeks, a month later, they pass away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they've given up the will to live,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the will can be a powerful thing. I mean, most of y'all know Amanda. I mean, she's going through it now, and how many times has she gone through it? I mean, that lady has a strong will. You know, a lot lesser a person would have already given up. And Amanda's still fighting, right? So she's got a strong will, you know, and that's what this says. And the opposite of this is true, is when we get into that, as the pastor says, that stinking thinking, right? When you get into that whole depression mindset, you're giving in, and that's going to have consequences in the flesh. So the moral of this is, how is your spirit man? Is your spirit man, not to be sexist in this, but we get to heaven, there's no marriage and all that anyway. So we're all the same in heaven. So who are you feeding more, your natural man or your spirit man? Right? Are you building up the spirit man? How do you build that spirit man up?
Prayer and staying God's word.
You gotta stay in God's word. And you gotta do things that don't feel natural, right? So like when you're depressed, when you're down, the Bible's full of stories like that. Even Jesus on the cross, right? Or right in the Garden of Gethsemane, you know, take this cup, Lord, and you know, tears of blood, right? And sweating blood, you know? So all of that, yet he let the Spirit take over, and he says, but your will be done, right? So we've got to, when we're down, it's not natural, but the thing is that's when we need to kick in the Spirit. When you're down in the natural, you've got to praise, like Peter and Paul when they were in prison, right? They were singing, right? Singing in prison, right?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't feel natural to praise or to do a Bible study when you're down, or to get in the Word when you're down, but that's when you need it the most, you know? And part of the reason why we have a class like this and we have friends is because of Ecclesiastes 4:10, right? Pity the man that's down and has no one to help him up, right? That's what we have. That's what you have all around you. You not only have the Word of God, But you have godly people with flesh on them that can do God's will and help you up in those times of need. Right? Because we all have those times of need. I had a flat tire yesterday, and I had a neighbor come. I have the best neighbors. Came over, he called and came over, and he had I don't know who has this. He had an impact wrench and a drill head, and just went over, bzz, bzz, you know, the tire was done, right? So it's like, you know, that's what friends are there for, right? Whose fault was the flat? It was mine, right? Tried to blame it on a dry rot tire, and then I figured out it was I loaded the trailer wrong, and it was rubbing against the tire, melted the whole tire. But once again, I still had a friend to help me even when I screw up, right? And that should be what we have, is that we have each other. We have friends to help even when we screw up, right? Okay. I think that's about it. Unless y'all got any closing comments, thoughts?
Group hug.
Group hug? Sing Kumbaya to the Lord?
A New Year's hug right here.